So welcome to the final presentation in today's International Project Management Day celebrations. I'm Kevin Aguanno. I'll be your presenter for this final session on Hidden Agile Benefits Revealed. Notice how I was hiding the slide and just moved away. That was on purpose. Yeah. I've been in the Agile community forever, since before we even called it Agile. I mean, I've been teaching some of these techniques since the mid-90s, using some of these techniques since the early 90s. So I've been a part of the Agile community from the start. I've watched it evolve and change over time. I teach Agile at several universities. I teach Agile to a lot of corporate clients. I've gotten all kinds of certifications and awards, too numerous to mention. Written over 30 books on Agile and project management related topics. So pick my brains while I'm here. One of the areas of my expertise has been talking about how the discipline structured approach to Agile aligns with governance models and trying to roll out Agile inside large corporations and looking at those issues around risk management and enterprise architecture and program management office initiatives and reporting, and how does Agile align with all these necessary corporate functions. So I've been getting involved in Agile business cases for Agile transformations, working with C-level executives for major banks and insurance companies and government, et cetera, helping come up with their Agile adoption strategy, helping mentor them through the Agile transformation, and I've seen a lot of the common pains and a lot of the good benefits that are there. Some of them are quite predictable, and there's some that have revealed themselves over time that were quite surprising. And there's been some research on this, and I've been publishing articles on some of the little things that have been revealed, and I've got some interesting things to talk about today. Lots of people talk about Agile and its effect on quality, and they talk about Agile and its effect on speed. How fast we can deliver, how fast the team can work. There's many Agile people who talk about risk and how Agile methods lower risk in many different ways. But here's three areas of benefits that are not often talked about. The financial benefits of Agile, the cultural benefits of Agile, and the personal or emotional benefits of Agile. Certainly some financial benefits are talked about. Faster, cheaper, right? Those have direct financial results. But I'm going to share with you some surprising benefits that you might not be thinking of. And one that's just emerged from some research that I've been doing that might surprise you quite again, that really could change your business case. Cultural benefits, there's some common ones that everybody knows about, better teaming and things like that. But there's also some cultural benefits of Agile that you might be surprised by. And the same thing with the personal or emotional benefits, how it affects us as individuals. I'm going to talk about each of these three. So what are some of the common financial benefits? What do you think? Just tell me, what do you think are some of the common financial benefits we'd get from an Agile project?
Realize outcomes of the project early stages.
Okay, so we can get some early delivery of business value, right? So we can start to get some of these, we can start putting things out into the world to be used faster. You don't have to wait for everything to be built. We can build things in chunks and get some of those chunks out the door and being used earlier, which means we start capturing business case benefits sooner. Excellent, good one. Any other financial benefits to Agile? ROI happens faster because we're getting value sooner, so we get a return on investment quicker. What else?
When talking about risk, you can identify risk earlier since you are doing smaller chunks instead of overseeing the finance for the whole project.
Okay, so we're breaking the project into chunks. We can deal with risk when it may have a smaller impact.
Financial risk.
Financial risk, okay. What else? Yes?
How about the financial benefit of only having workable software?
So
Workable products.
So we know. So there's a financial benefit of not having a lot of work in progress and nothing to show for it. Imagine, this is something Toyota figured out when they were building cars. Instead of building 300 engines and 300 trunks and 300 doors and 300 frames and then they start assembling the cars, what if there's a design change? It's like, oh no, all that piled up stuff has to be thrown out, we got to start over. There's huge waste by having all this work in progress. And we see this on our individual projects. These people that are always firefighting, they're always dealing with the latest crisis. I start this project because the stakeholder was yelling at me to get it started. So I get started, and the next minute somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, oh, we got to get this started too, it's urgent. Okay, so I start the next one. And the next day they tell me to work on something different. And before you know it, I've got, what was the example from earlier today? 18 projects on the go. but no progress is being made on any of them because I'm just jumping from one to the next and I'm not really making any progress. Right? That's this concept of work in progress. I made tremendous progress, but nothing's done. I got lots started, nothing finished. Everything's on the back burner. There was a study I talk about in one of my classes. There was a study done about multitasking. And that they said if you had 5 8-hour activities and you can only work 8 hours a day, if we prioritized them, I do one Monday, one Tuesday, by Friday all 5 would be done. But if we work on each of those 5 every day, so going across all 5 each day, it would take till Wednesday afternoon the second week to get them all done because of all the interruptions. Just when you're getting focused on one thing, somebody says, oh, I need you to work on this other thing. So you jump over to that. Well, there's a lost productivity. You were in the groove, you were focused, you could have gotten a lot done, but now you're distracted and you have to switch to something else. How fast it takes us to switch varies by gender and age, studies show. Women have a faster recovery time from one of those interruptions. They'll get more productive quicker on the second thing than men. But men are slightly more productive when we're uninterrupted because we focus more. We block out our surroundings. We can tend to dive a bit deeper and block out everything that's going on around us. My wife calls it selective hearing, but right? But the idea is that by multitasking, you lose productive time, switching from one to the next. And lots of multitasking, 5 things in a day, 5 projects, say, you're so focused on one, just when it comes time to work on the second, you were right on the verge of a brilliant breakthrough. It's like, oh, sorry, what was that? Oh, Project B? Oh, what was Project B? Ah, right. Now you go start doing Project B stuff, and whatever you're about to do on Project A is gone. It's lost. It could take you a long time to recover, to get back. What was I doing again? There were 5 things. I only did 2. I forgot now. And it'll take you a while to get back into that productive state. Some studies say that for males over 40, it can take 45 minutes to get back into the productive state. So there can be a significant amount of lost time. And if you imagine that happens 5 times a day, well, no wonder you're losing so much of your day, you're not going to get anything done. So we have to be very cautious about multitasking, working across too many things at once. Agile allows us to get one piece of something done. Get it done, focus, get it out the door. Then you can move on to the next one, get that out the door. And the idea is that by doing that, we don't get stuck with lots of work in progress and nothing to show for it. Very good. So let me show you what some of the common Agile benefits are that people normally come up with. Earlier delivery of value, somebody got that one, that was great. Less risk of going over budget. And there's several things that contribute to that. One of them is I can fix price the project. Agile allows us to fix price. I'm going to do 6 iterations. I've got 5 people on the team. I know how many hours a week they're going to work. Times 6, I can come up with the cost of that iteration. But what will vary is how much scope we get done within that period of time. But I can fix price it. Earlier feedback about whether I'm doing the right thing or not. I don't just do lessons learned at the end of the project. I do it every iteration. So I can adapt those lessons learned right away. If the client says, that's what I said, not what I meant, you get that in a waterfall project, usually at the end of the project. There's huge, potentially huge amounts of rework. It's very costly to fix those problems. But in Agile, I may have only worked for a few weeks. And they say, that's not what I meant. It's only a few weeks potentially of waste, not the entire project. So getting the feedback earlier means less costly rework. There's a big focus on efficiency and waste reduction. This comes from the Agile's earlier cousin of Lean, right? This focus on removing all causes of waste in the process. Agile focuses really very tightly on waste reduction throughout the process in everything that we do. That lessons learned every iteration is one way of avoiding waste. Another one are these daily team coordination meetings, these daily scrum meetings or daily stand-up meetings. Those are there to avoid waste. What kind of waste? Well, somebody could be sitting there struggling with a problem, and day after day they're pulling their hair out trying to figure out how to solve the problem, and at the weekly status meeting somebody puts up their hand and says, I'm having a hard time, I need help. Well, that was, there could have been 4 or 5 days of wasted time there when the person sitting right next to them knew the answer. Agile says, let's have a daily team meeting, just a few 10, 15 minutes in the morning, a quick start-off, kickoff of your day, and there's 3 questions we ask. And the very first question is, you having any problems? Were there any issues completing your work yesterday? And somebody can put up their hand and say, yeah, I couldn't figure this out yesterday. Does anybody know the answer? The person right next to them could say, yep, here's the solution. Problem solved instantly. Big source of waste avoided. Right? Very much focused on efficiency and productivity. We don't just find defects at the end, because those defects might show that my design is flawed. I test all the way through, so I'm finding if there's design errors earlier in the process, again, fixing them quickly before it escalates and the problems become bigger and bigger. And a different approach to contingency. Waterfall tends to have huge buckets of general contingency based on the risk level of the project. You could say this is a low risk project, so I'm going to, whatever the budget is, I'm going to add 10 or 15% just to cover what ifs, right? Stuff that could go wrong. If this is a medium risk project, I might add 20 to 40% contingency. If it's a high risk project, sometimes people double the budget, cross their fingers, and hope it's enough. But Agile has a different way of managing risk. Most Agile techniques focus on risk reduction, so the projects tend to be lower risk anyway because of the use of Agile. But Agile also has, if you're using the disciplined structured approach to Agile, there's very specific techniques for applying pockets of contingency with laser-like focus for specific identifiable risks. So in the end, you need very little general contingency. In fact, many Agile projects on low-risk projects have no contingency, or they just add 5% general contingency because there's so much contingency placed elsewhere throughout the project. Medium-risk projects, 10, 15%. High-risk projects, maybe 30, 40, 50% contingency, not double. Agile projects tend to have much less general contingency in them. So these are some financial benefits that we've identified over the years, and these are ones that people commonly come up with. But there's some hidden benefits, financial benefits. And here's one of the more interesting ones you'll never find out anywhere else. This is the first time I've ever presented this, although it is in one article that I published for PMI, the projectmanagement.org website, but it doesn't have a lot of readership. So this is probably the first time you heard about this. And this is fascinating. There are business case benefits from Agile, financial benefits specifically tied to capital cost depreciation. Let's talk through this. You might not be an accountant, but I'll try and explain it simply. Imagine we had a waterfall project. We're going to compare the Agile to the waterfall project. Accounting rules say that when you're building something big, you can't expense it. If I spend $5 million on a project, I just don't deduct that from my income at the end of the year to calculate my taxes. Those big initiatives have to be depreciated over time. We have to spread the costs out over a different number of years, and it depends on how the government has depreciation rate tables, right? So you can figure out this cost must be depreciated over 5 years, this one's 25 years. There's all these different rules, right, about how you can depreciate something. So you have to spread it out over time. And the rule says you can't start depreciating until it's in use, until what you built is actually creating some business benefits. So imagine a waterfall project where you're building something and it takes 18 months to get it done, and at the end, then you start using it. Well, for the first 12 months, there's no deduction because nothing's in use yet. At the end of 18 months, we can finally start claiming deductions. Now, say it was a $10 million project, and say we were depreciating this at a rate of 7%, right? 7% of that can be claimed per year. Well, that would be about $700,000 a year, but because only 6 months of the year it was actually being used, because we delivered halfway through the year, we have to divide it by 2. So we have a total depreciable amount of $350,000. Now that's the portion of the expense that's eligible. We still got to figure in our marginal tax rates and all that stuff. So you don't get a full benefit of $350,000, but that's how much you can deduct. Is that clear so far? So you could make $350,000 worth of income, and it's tax-free because you can claim this against that. That's the idea. Agile, though, doesn't deliver in one big bang. Agile delivers in phases, in chunks. Now let's just pretend we had 6-month releases. Maybe we do 1-month iterations, but we release live the deliverables every 6 months. The same project, $10 million. The first 6-month release, I can take, I've created about 1/3 of the value, so 1/3 of that $10 million I can start depreciating, but it was only 6 months. So I have to take the yearly 7%, divide it by 2, because I've only got 6 months worth. So the first 6 months I can already claim $116,000 of depreciation. The second, now we separate that from the balance remaining. We multiply that. Now I've got this in year 2. I'm using it for a full year, so I've got another $232,000, which is basically double this. Right? So that's just from the 6-month release. But this was the first release. The second release came out at the end of the year. So end of the year, there was no usage during the first year, but the second year, I was able to claim a full year's worth. And the third release, coming out a year and a half in, well, halfway through that second year, I can start to claim some of that as depreciation. We add that all up. Year one, I can depreciate $116,000. Year two, I can already claim $582,000. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about here? Okay. And it gets more and more. As you add year 3 and 4, the numbers just start jumping up. Here's the difference. Waterfall, after 2 years, I could claim $350,000 of depreciation. Agile, after year 2, almost double. Close to $700,000 in depreciation. Now, the difference, $349,000, at a marginal combined federal and provincial tax rate of 26.5%, which is the current Ontario corporate tax rate. 26.5% of that. Agile gives me an extra $92,000 after tax in my pocket just by switching to Agile. So there are significant benefits from using these deliverables sooner. This is something you're not going to hear elsewhere, and that can make a huge difference on a business case because this is real dollars, after-tax dollars in your pocket. Question?
How do you define that in use? Because you're not still full use, right, from your 6-month iteration?
No, what we're saying is that we're saying it's a release. Not every iteration do you release something live because you don't create enough value to justify the cost of transitioning it out into the real world. Training people, doing all that change management stuff, right? That's costly. That's not free. So we're not going to do that every iteration. You'll accumulate several iterations worth of work before you justify putting it live. In this example, I used a 6-month release. So there was lots of work going on, and we accumulated value, and after 6 months, we put it live. We launched it out into the world. Then we did more work, and then 6 months after that, we launched another piece live. So some of the value was attainable after the first 6-month release. More was attained at the 12-month release, and the final amount was at the 18-month release.
You have to prove that to do the depreciation,
Yeah.
right?
Now, to keep the numbers simple, I use exact 6-month releases and everything, but you might have a 3-month release, then a 9-month release, then a 2-month release, so your math might be a little bit different, but I wanted to show you the concepts and keep it simple. Now, what's interesting is nobody's talking about this yet. Your finance guys don't understand that Agile projects can capture stuff sooner. They just think it's a project like everything else. When the project's done, then we start depreciating. If you can have a discussion with them, say, you know, guys, Agile's different. You guys can start depreciating sooner. They'd be all over this. They'd eat this up. They'd love it because it means they can start getting some of those benefits right away. Yes, question?
I was confused because how can you differentiate something that is not yet completed?
Okay, so the question is, how do you differentiate something that's not completed? Say I'm building a park, okay? And I want to have grass, trees, and flowers. I want to build a bridge and a swing set and a jungle gym for the kids. And I want to have a path paved through the park and signs and lights and garbage cans. The cost to the municipality who's building that park might be, you know, the entire $10 million for the whole project to get that park built, right? And they would start, well, the municipalities don't pay tax. Pretend a company's building the park, okay? They're building a corporate park. At the end of the entire project, when everything's done, when everything's finished, my project's done, then we start depreciating that over several years. But with the Agile approach, we'd say, you know what? I don't need the whole park built before I open it up to the public. Why don't we just do the landscaping first? I'm going to move the dirt, plant the grass, trees, and flowers, and then I'm going to open it up to the public. The full park isn't there, but they can start taking advantage of that park. They can have picnics, they can play soccer games, they can go for a walk. They can start getting value from that park. And because a piece of that park is now available for use, it's being used, I can start depreciating that portion of the costs right away. Next, the carpenters come in and they build the jungle gyms and the swing sets and the bridge over the creek. Once they're done, that phase is done, I can start depreciating that work now too. So I don't have to wait for everything to be done. I can start depreciating it early if there's complete usable pieces there that have been released for use.
That's a key term, though. It's not completion, it's usability.
Yeah.
Those pieces are done and usable, not the entire project. So
We use the term ready for use.
ready for use, yeah, potentially usable. Potentially usable, yeah.
So are you allocating the same value on your minimal viable product in
first release?
So minimum viable product is an agile term that just says, what's the smallest amount of stuff I got to get done to have that first release? I don't have to build everything. What's the minimum amount for people to actually use this or want to use it?
So you're putting value on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we can look at the cost. What have I spent to date on that minimum viable product? Once that product is out being used, I can start depreciating those costs. And the business benefits can be significant, the financial benefits. As I said, the problem is your accountants, your finance guys don't know that you're doing Agile. They don't understand what Agile means. They don't know that they can start depreciating sooner, and they're missing out on tremendous benefits to the organization as a whole. So start having those discussions. People will be much more excited about you using Agile, especially the finance guys, when they realize what this means for them. So that's a financial benefit. I throw a new hidden financial benefit to you guys. Yeah. Let's talk about cultural benefits. The culture of the organization or the culture of the team. What benefits do you think we get from using Agile approaches, from a cultural perspective? Let's see what we have as a group. Yeah. So co-location is a technical practice where you have the team working together in one work environment. So they're not communicating via email or over the phone. They're sitting in one room. They're going to turn to each other and say, hey, is this right? Look over my shoulder. Is this what you're talking about? Or they can walk over to somebody's desk and say, you know, hey, I have a question. Can you answer it quickly? The idea is by working in, sometimes they call it a war room or an enclosed space, one space, the team can communicate verbally and not have to write emails off to each other and create documents unnecessarily that could be dealt with verbally. And this feedback is instant. You don't send somebody an email and wait 2 days till they get back to you. You can go tap them on the shoulder and get an immediate answer. So that accelerates the project. But what's the cultural benefit from co-location? How does it affect the culture of the organization? That builds teaming, better teaming. People can see the person, they look them in the face, they start to bond, they start to work collaboratively on stuff. That builds teamwork. Sure. What other cultural benefits? Yes?
Confidence to the stakeholders.
Ah.
Business that you're building this for.
Yeah.
I think they're seeing it develop rapidly, and if it's not working or it isn't as they expect, you can change immediately, and then they're building the confidence in you to be, oh, I'm going to have a successful.
You've thrown a couple, you wrapped a couple into one there. That was pretty good. Building better confidence in your business stakeholders, your sponsors, your product owner, whatever you want to call it. They have asked you to go do some work. They've trusted you with some money and time to go do some work. Wouldn't it be nice for you to come back instead of 18 months from now saying, hey, I think I'm done, and misunderstand? They're getting more and more nervous as that time goes on. Are they building the right thing? Are they giving me what I need? Did they misunderstand? And the more nervous they get, the more they want to interfere and micromanage, and it causes all kinds of grief. But Agile, I'm saying, sure, this might be an 18-month project, but every couple, 3, 4 weeks, whatever, I'm going to come back and show you a piece of it. So let's just do the first month or so, and I'll come back and I'll show you how I did. And they're like, oh, geez, they got a bunch of stuff done. They said they'd be done in a month. They were done in a month. The quality's pretty good. Okay, I'll give you another month. And after month 2, you come back and you've met your criteria again, and then you try again in month 3. You know, after a few months, they're going to say, you know what, I think these guys got it. Their level of anxiety goes down. They're not going to micromanage because they see you're making progress. They see the deliverables starting to appear. There's less stress, less uncertainty. Absolutely. Yes?
It's a negative thing, but it's actually positive. We're actually moving the risk from IT to the business. In that respect, I'm saying traditional waterfall business gives us requirements, goes away. We make a lot of assumptions as IT going forward, and a lot of times we might not get it right.
Yep.
They're in the room. They're taking on that responsibility.
Absolutely.
They're taking on that risk by managing the backlog.
Agile gives the business more control over the day-to-day workings of the project. Normally they give you the requirements and you say, once you've signed off, go away, I don't want to talk to you until it's time for UAT. And you run away and do a bunch of work, and then you come back for acceptance, and that's when all the chaos starts, when they say that's what I said, not what I meant, and all the mess starts. This way, business has more direct control over the day-to-day workings of the project. They're reprioritizing the backlog every iteration. That's the list of to-dos. They reprioritize that every iteration, so you're always working on their hottest priorities. If something new pops up, some urgent issue, they put it up to the top of the backlog, and maybe that's the first thing you work on next iteration, but the idea is they're in control. They're steering the project in the direction that they need it to go. But because they're in more control, they get more accountability for the decisions they made. Right? They have control, but they own the results. Yeah.
As I understand it, it is more of an enabling and servant model versus kind of the military
Sure. Agile has a different style of leadership, right? PMI says there's 7 modes of leadership, 7 styles of leadership generically. The least effective in most scenarios is the command and control model. As I like to tell my classes, that only works in crisis scenarios, right? Like EMS, military, police, right? Fire, they pull up to a burning building, there's people screaming, help me, the house is on fire, I can't get out. The fire chief doesn't sit there with his team and say, okay, everybody, let's hold a meeting to try and come to a consensus on how we're going to approach this problem. Oh, hang on, the other truck's coming, you know, the other 3 people on our team aren't here yet, let's wait till they're here so we can have a consensus, right? That doesn't work. That's why they use command and control. You turn on the water, you get a ladder up there right now, right? They command and control works in crisis scenarios. Fortunately, most of our projects are not in crisis mode most of the time. So we need another style of leadership. And as Ralph at the back suggested, generically, the most effective style of leadership generically is called the servant leader model. The servant leader. Who here's heard of the servant leader model before? Oh, most of you, good. So just very quick summary for those of you who haven't heard of it. The servant leader model, it combines sort of 2 different ways of thinking. First, I lead the team. I get the team organized. I get the objectives clarified. I give them a goal and understand they all have a shared idea, a shared common view of that goal, and then I get them started running towards that goal. I get the team started. Once they start running towards that goal, I'm not going to micromanage them. I'm going to step out of the way and let them do their best that they can to achieve that objective. My role then changes from leader to servant. Well, how does that work? The role of the servant is to remove barriers to productivity. The team delegates work to the PM. Anything that's not a value-creating activity, the team delegates to the PM. Here's an example. Team member, so this is what we do our daily scrum meetings, right? We do our daily team meetings and we ask those questions. Remember what that first question was that I asked already? Were there any issues completing your work yesterday? That's not just asking each other for help. It can also be delegating stuff to the PM. Somebody might say, yeah, I didn't get help from Fred over in Department 22. I sent him 4 emails. I followed up 3 times with phone calls. I even went over his desk yesterday. He was around, but I couldn't find him. So I'm still waiting. I can't make progress without that information from Fred. As the servant leader, I'll say, you know what? You're creating deliverables. Why don't you start on the next deliverable? I'll go chase down Fred. Because you sitting there chasing him down, you're not creating value. Creating value is getting deliverables done. So delegate that to me as the PM. That's a non-value creating activity. I'll go chase him down. I'll escalate with his boss. Maybe she knows where he is. I'll figure it out. But that's something I can take on. So that's how I serve the team, removing barriers to productivity. Good. Any other cultural changes? Yeah.
Change is incremental and iterative. So the fatigue on employees is less because you can roll out a change incrementally and iteratively.
Yeah, so there's not going to be one huge, massive change that's going to overwhelm everybody, but I'm also not changing every 2 weeks. Here's another tiny change, another tiny change, another tiny change, death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's going to drive them nuts. That's why the banks don't change their retail banking platform every 3 weeks, because there's thousands of tellers across the country who got to be trained on the new system. They don't have enough training people to do all that. Never mind, if you just made a change and didn't train them, the help desk light would light up. They don't have enough help desk staff. So what they do is they accumulate the changes, and they do 1 or 2 annual updates of the software. Accumulate all the little changes, do 1 big release, so they just have to train them once or twice. Right? So we're trying to minimize the amount of change or the chaos from the change. Here's some common ones that people come up with when I ask these questions. Agile encourages cross-functional teaming. We're not estimating and working in silos. It's not the testing people are working separately from the people building the solution. They're working together and they can collaborate and communicate. It speeds things up. So we're breaking down some of these barriers. The team and the sponsor, everybody has greater accountability for what's going on. They're making more decisions that are delegated down into the organization, but they have accountability for those results. There's a mindset of efficiency and productivity. The teams are looking at their productivity metric called velocity in Agile. They're trying to improve. They're trying to track how they're doing with forecasts, looking at their burn down charts. There's all these tools and techniques to help them manage and track and try to improve their productivity. More openness and transparency. These are some of the common cultural changes that we find. But one of the hidden ones, viral cultural change. Let me explain what that means. And I'll give you an example. I was part of the team that came up with the strategy for deploying Agile within one of our largest Canadian banks. I worked directly with the CIOs across multiple divisions of the bank in figuring out what the strategy would be for adopting Agile, in selecting pilot projects, even mentoring those pilot projects from across different lines of business to help them figure it out. And there was a specific strategy taken on here. And it came right from the overall corporate CIO. What he said was, I've read a little bit about Agile. I get it. There's going to be some cultural changes. Agile forces people to work differently. It forces them to work more collaboratively and open, and there's not as many handoffs. Things are going to be much smoother. I get it. And you know you're going to drag these people kicking and screaming into this new world, because that's not how they're working today. We work very much in silos, and people are used to handing off, and there's a lot of finger pointing when things fall through the cracks. That's how we are today. This Agile world will break all that down. I get it. There's going to be huge benefits. It's going to be hard. The people change management stuff like we talked about earlier today, those issues will be significant, but if we can overcome them, if we can get this rolled out, these people on these Agile projects will learn a new way of working, and they're going to see the benefits, they're going to feel the benefits, and they're going to like it. I've worked with teams at the end of the Agile project, they're saying, please don't break us up. You know, normally you assemble from a pool of people to make a team. They're saying, please don't break us up, because we don't want to go back to the waterfall way of working in some new team. We like working together. We started to bond. We started to make new friends. Our productivity is high. Just keep us intact and give us another Agile project. So business understands this, and they're saying, you know what? Here's a hidden benefit. At the end of this project, we may have to break up the team. But they're going to go out and they're going to seed other projects now. They're going to spread out into other projects. And after a couple Agile projects, and people get really good at this and really prefer this way of working, they're going to start to bring some of those new attitudes and ways of working back to their waterfall projects. And it's infectious. These grassroots changes can be infectious. New ways of working, more collaboration. People see their neighbor doing something different and it's effective and it's working. They'll start modeling and copying that behavior. And before you know it, it starts to spread. And they're hoping, consciously, this was their strategy, that starting an Agile initiative will drive positive cultural change among those teams. But when those people are spread out into other teams and other projects, they're going to start to bring those new attitudes, and that cultural change will spread throughout the organization. Even the waterfall projects will get infected by this new way of thinking and working. And it worked. They started this 7 years ago, and already the culture and the way of working and the teaming and the collaboration in the waterfall projects across silos has improved. Not as great as the Agile projects, but there has been a measurable positive difference. So Agile, a hidden benefit is it can create viral cultural change in your non-Agile projects over time. Any thoughts, comments, or questions about this? Yes?
I think for that to work, though, there must be top-down advocacy from the management.
Yes, for the purpose of the recording, there should be top-down support for this Agile initiative, and 100% in this case there was. Absolutely. It came right from the overall corporate CIO downwards, absolutely. What about emotional benefits? What are some of the personal or emotional benefits you think an individual will get from Agile?
Are you talking about emotional intelligence here?
Potentially, yeah.
Yep, so it's a big topic, right?
I'm talking about at the personal level, not at the corporate culture, the individual response.
On the personal level, when you talk about emotional intelligence, is to understand your skills, to understand how you utilize it, and to understand that self-awareness, to understand those around you.
Yes?
How to interact and how to be with each other.
Sure, that's what emotional intelligence is. So how does Agile make that different? Yes?
People feel that they can make a difference.
People can see that they're making a difference. They can see the results sooner. They see the impact. They see the productivity improving. They feel empowered. Excellent. What else?
Less stress because the fact that they're able, and they're working, as you said, in a co-location together, they're able to turn to their peers so that they don't have that anxiety building up and then that they're not productive.
Less stress, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, some people, when I first started talking about Agile way back in, well, we didn't even call it Agile back then, but say when we got it, we were talking about using extreme programming. This was in the mid to late 90s. I started talking about extreme programming, and one of my sponsors just totally flipped out. He thought extreme programming meant risky because it had the word extreme in it. And the team members got anxious. Extreme programming, that means I'm going to be working harder, longer hours. Oh my gosh, they didn't understand what that meant, right? So it created anxiety when they didn't understand. But once they started working in this mode, everybody relaxed pretty quickly because they saw it was actually safer. It wasn't scarier, it was actually safer than traditional approaches, specifically on risky projects. Yeah. What other emotional benefits have we seen?
Sense of team and camaraderie.
Teamwork builds up, sure. Anybody else? Yeah.
Bonding.
Yeah, teamwork, bonding, people build relationships, they work more closely together. A lot of the handoffs go away. Think about the inefficiencies in our normal processes, right? Somebody builds something and throws it over the wall to the guy who's going to test or verify it. And they don't really talk together very much. The tester thinks they found an issue, tries to communicate it back. The first person sees their response like, I don't know what he's talking about. I can't reproduce it. And there's all these inefficiencies. But if we're working co-located, we can work together cross-functionally. Somebody can say, hey, this isn't working. The tester sitting beside the person who built it. And he looks over his shoulder. He says, yeah, it is. You're just working on the old specs. Oh, okay, problem solved. And we avoided all this miscommunication, right? So by working in a tighter fashion, we improve. Yeah?
So because you have that collocation and that communication all the time, you also have well-rounded individuals in the sense that they understand the challenges or they have the big picture.
Yeah, people tend to have the bigger picture. They're not just focusing on my job, my piece. We work as a cross-functional team. I'm responsible as well as everybody else is on the team to get it all done. So I care about not just my work, but everybody's work, absolutely. So let's look at what common responses to this are. People talked about increased energy. People working on Agile projects feel more energy, more alive, more psyched up, more pumped up because they see they're making a difference. They see the results happening. Think about it. If I was working on a 3-year project, waterfall, and we're at the end of year 2, what do you think the energy level's like? You're like, oh my God, I've been at this for 2 years. There's a whole other year to go before I have anything to show for it. Does it even matter if I come in today or not? Right? But if you're working on Agile projects, by breaking it down into chunks, you're responsible for delivering something in the next few weeks, and you just delivered something a few weeks ago. You're riding on a wave of successes. You're getting stuff done. You've got a completely different energy level. Increased sense of teaming or belonging that we've talked about, right? That group bonding by working in a cross-functional team. Lower uncertainty, less chaos because the team is being able to work together in a more structured, planned, deliberate way. It's not just firefighting. Think about a waterfall project. You know, you come up with a plan, but there's only a few key milestones. In between those milestones, anything can kind of happen, right? Sometimes people aren't exactly following the work breakdown structure. They're getting the work done, but in a different order, a better way, or they found a preferred approach, and they're not quite following the plan. Agile, that can happen. You can't go away for weeks at a time doing your own thing. As long as you're done by the deadline, nobody cares. Agile, those deadlines are so short. You have to work in such a coordinated, communicating fashion. You got to stay in sync with the team. So you get less chaos. What are some of the more unusual emotional benefits, the hidden emotional benefits? Well, increased sense of self-esteem or self-worth. You get a team that's been underperforming in a waterfall project, and I've worked with many of those teams. They've been suffering for a long, long time. And you decide to replan the rest of the project as an Agile project. All that demoralization, especially if it's a troubled project, right? They've been failing, it's not going well, they've been pulling all-nighters and working weekends and still have nothing to show for it. You switch to an Agile mode, every few weeks something's done and they celebrate. And then they build something else and get it done and celebrate. They're starting to feel like they're getting traction and making progress. They feel better about themselves as people. They feel better about the success, and their outlook for the future is more positive. That's a significant emotional change. Teams feel safer. The project is less chaotic. Think about a big waterfall project where everybody's kind of doing their own thing and you can't tell what the other groups are doing because they're working in silos. Here we're working cross-functionally. Everybody sees that everybody's got their piece. Every day we're meeting in their daily scrum meeting to stay coordinated. If we need help, we get help right away. I'm not running on my own. We're coordinating our work to make sure that we're working in a unified fashion. We're not working at cross purposes. We're dealing with the risky stuff with all these risk reduction strategies and tools that are in Agile. The project risk comes way down. the sponsor's more engaged with the project and more involved, making sure that you're building the right thing and seeing the results that you're getting and giving you positive feedback, overall the team feels safer. They feel less nervous at risk. And overall morale's better because they do have a sense of progress. They are seeing results right away. They're riding on a wave of successes. So those are some of the hidden emotional benefits. Yes?
Can I add self-actualization? Because if you look at software development, they're all specialist roles.
Yes.
They're moving to specialist generalists.
Yep.
So they get the opportunity to learn a different role, a different skill set. So
Yeah, in Agile, we try to make use of something called generalizing specialists. We all have a specialty. We're all good at something. I mean, you should be, right? But the idea is I'm not just doing that one thing. I can give you an example from a real project. We were planning an initiative with a team, putting it all together, and there were some Cisco router configurations that had to be done. So we turned to Farhad. We always turn to Farhad. He's like the guru of Cisco router configurations. So we automatically say, okay, Farhad, those are yours. Now, as an Agile team, we don't do that planning in isolation. We do it as a group. Somebody says, well, does it have to be Farhad? And I said, well, he knows how to do it. And somebody says, yeah, but I've been taking night school courses on this. I'm certified Cisco guy, and nobody's ever assigns me any of that work. I said, yeah, but you're such a great Java coder. He says, yeah, but can I try it out? Can I please practice? I said, sure, why not, right? You know, the guy was great at it, loved it. He was thrilled that he was able to do the work. And you know, the guy that always did Cisco router configurations hated it. He was just good at it, so we always assigned him. Once we gave him something else to work on, he was happier too. So the idea is this self-actualization, giving people a chance to use their skills. I kind of lump that in under self-worth, self-esteem. It just makes people feel more happy, more empowered, more effective, happier with their overall performance.
Kevin, is there more learning as well in that environment because you're all sharing as opposed to holding on maybe to your little piece of information?
Yeah, there can definitely be. We have a broader understanding of what's going on across the entire project, but I would call it more of a cultural difference, right? That we're learning each other's roles and we're bonding more at the organizational level. This is the personal level. So ultimately, there are common benefits, but there's more unusual benefits, hidden benefits. And if we keep picking away at this, more and more are starting to reveal themselves because there's more and more research comparing waterfall teams and agile teams in the same organization working on the same kind of project just in different ways, or the same team doing the same project for two different clients, but one's agile and one's non-agile. And we're starting to have more comparisons out there in the data, in the literature, and we're starting to see some of these differences. And some really interesting stuff is revealed, like that financial one I talked to you about. There's a lot of interesting stuff emerging. So, there's many reasons to use Agile, but you need to develop your own unique business case for your organization based on the benefits that matter to you, including financial benefits, including emotional benefits, including cultural benefits, and including those other ones about risk and other things that we've talked about before. Make sure you include all the right elements and build your own unique business case for your organization. Thank you.